Welcome back to the Shared Practices podcast. I'm Caitlin Embree, and today I am joined by Corey Pinniger. He is the CEO and founder of Reach. Thanks for being here, Corey.
Thanks for having me back on. I appreciate it.
How's it going? We're so excited to talk to you today about what Reach does, what it can offer, and just learn a little bit more about virtual assistants and the industry and how they're changing dental practices.
I'm excited.
So tell us a little bit about your background. You have kind of a cool story, and I think, a lot of our audience is very entrepreneurial, and you are a young, successful entrepreneur. So I want to hear just kind of how you got to where you are today, a little bit of the story of Reach.
I will do my best to give the 90-second microwave version of my 9-year entrepreneurial journey. But I live here in Salt Lake City, Utah, was raised my teenage years and beyond. I come from a entrepreneurial but operating father. So my dad really specializes in running, 1,500 to 5,000 person teams, leads a publicly traded group out of New York right now, but started his career as an entrepreneur. So I think I grew up in kind of that business-minded home. And when I was going to Brigham Young University in Utah, I got a call one day saying that there was a startup company named Weave, and they needed help cleaning out one of their closets, and they were willing to pay $500 to do it. So I worked for Weave and keep in mind, this is when Weave is like 15 people, like tiny. The phones were down 24/7. Like it was a dumpster fire inside of a dumpster fire. And it was a really, really fun time. But I worked there for, I think around a year. And the company was burning an incredible amount of cash at the time. And so the investors told the founders that they either needed to lay off 40% of the company or they would get fired as the founders. And this is in December of 2016. So in December of 2016, Brandon and Jared Rodman, who were the founders of Weave, approached me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to buy part of Weave from us or part of our business?" And it was the unsexy call center component where there was inbound and outbound phone calls, insurance verifications, all the mundane work. And there was a couple employees involved. It was not a big business. It was doing probably $250,000 in revenue, but they sold it to me for $1. So it was really just a asset purchase deal to get it off their books and to get those employees off their books. And that was the start of my journey 9 years ago. And it's been a roller coaster ride that I thoroughly love.
That is such a cool story. I'm so glad you shared that. So as you transition this company and grow it, grow it where it is today, tell us a little bit along the way of how it got there. And I know originally you made some changes right off the bat. So how did we get to what Reach is today?
That is a podcast within itself question, which is a really, really good question. It is in business, there's two things that are important to drive a scalable, successful business. Number one, you have to have product market fit. Are you selling something that people actually need? And when we bought the business, it was focused on answering service and recall services where you would pay per appointment that was scheduled, which was awesome. But when we hit years ago our first 1,000 practices on board, we turned in as an entrepreneur, it was an internal dumpster fire. We became unscalable. The services that we rendered solved a problem. But the bigger we got, the harder it was to scale that quality that we as a company expected and that our customers expected too. And so kind of that part two evolution is where we then realized we could actually embed dedicated virtual assistants to help with overflow phone calls, to help with insurance verifications and all of these other things. But throughout the years, and Michael Dell in a podcast I recently listened to said it really well. Successful companies are 1,000 failures and 1,000 iterations off that failure. So very early on, 9 years ago in December of 2016, we knew that there was a problem to be solved, but then it was taking what's the solution that works and then what's the solution that actually scales as we go past 1,000 practices to 2,000 practices and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of us listening are considering what virtual assistants could do for our practices. We've either tried them already, they're already integrated, or we have colleagues that have them in their practices. And we're kind of wondering, like, is this for us? So, is my particular practice one that would benefit from a virtual assistant? So, talk to me a little bit about some of your dental practices that reach out, what your most common kind of need that you're fulfilling is when they come to you initially.
Really, really good question. There's kind of two different angles to look at this. Number one, when we all go to the doctor, none of us will, I know myself, I show up and I say, hey, doc, I can't go to bed at night. Or, hey, doc, I'm not feeling as much energy. There's three trends in the industry that I think virtual assistants can help solve. And you could deal with a myriad of these symptoms. One of those is in the industry, because of how lean a front desk is built, they are built to miss a lot of phone calls, to not have the capacity to do the unscheduled treatment phone calls, the recare calls, like things fall through the gap. And that is not because of a lack of good team members. It's just what happens when you put one or two people in the front desk and you expect them to do 21 different tasks. So that's one. The second thing is ever since COVID, costs in the United States have just gone through the roof and they do not appear to be stopping. So you've got rent that costs more, you have weave that costs more, dentrix costs more, your staff costs more. But then if you look at the data from the ADA, insurance reimbursements really have not statistically gone up since 2001. So you have a ceiling that's not rapidly increasing, and you have a floor that's applying a lot of the practitioners. So practitioners are making less money. Virtual assistants can actually help by being cost effective, create margin in the business that then can go to paying for rent or helping pick up those missed phone calls or making those recare calls. And then the final component, and I am as blue blooded American as you can find, but I in 2021, we had all of our people in Utah in the United States. We had a 30,000 square foot building just with our call center team and over 300 agents in it. Ever since COVID, there was a term called the Great Resignation, and it is harder to retain and find reliable and engaged team members more than ever today. And so those are kind of the three main areas that we're going at. It's you're missing opportunity, you're struggling with this cost epidemic within America, or you just need someone stable who is engaged doing those roles. Because being the clinician 8 hours a day, but then running a growing business is really hard. And if you don't have engaged and reliable team members on top of that, it is a nightmare of stress that many of us have felt.
I agree with a lot of what you just said. I think touching on the team retention aspect, what I find that it brings is a lot of relief to my clients, just knowing that there is an aspect of their team that is predictable to a certain extent. They've set up a virtual assistant. They've given this person the training individual to their practice, which I think we'll touch on a little bit. And there's less concern about, what if they leave tomorrow because it is so well ingrained into the practice. And they can reach out to you guys and say, hey, something's not working. I need help with this. I need another person on my team. And so it brings some stability in the team retention aspect that I think has caused a lot of us just some panic, since COVID is a good point. One of the things that I think about in where a practice would really benefit from this is if they are investing in marketing pretty heavily and they've identified that patient growth is a bottleneck to where they want to go. And so they need new patients. They're working really hard every month to meet those new patient goals. I find that making sure you have somebody to answer the phone off hours and during business hours every time is huge. Can you speak on that a little bit?
So there's and this for my 9 years in the industry, this has been pretty consistent. The average missed call rate for last year was 31%. And for my 9 years, the number has always hovered between 28 and 32% of phone calls go unanswered during business hours, not even total business hours. And if a new patient calls and their phone call is not picked up, there's a 14% chance that they will leave a voicemail. 56% of all of our overdue patients on our recare list are actually being reached out to or called. Like, there is just so much opportunity, as you're saying. And if you're going to go invest heavily in marketing, let's just call a spade, whether it's right or wrong. We live in a more transactional world than ever. If I go call the salon I want to get my haircut at, and they don't pick up and I got to get my haircut, I'm calling the next Google listing. And
Right.
so practices today have to be built in a way where the phone call can get picked up. Someone's not going to get left on hold for 10 minutes. And that alone itself, if you're picking up those phone calls, drives a significant difference. If you go spend 10 grand with an agency and marketing and you're missing 32% of your phone calls, 32% of your money has been lit on fire before you ever even spoke to them.
Exactly. And so, part of it is setting your infrastructure up to where that phone is getting answered. And then the second part is making sure the person answering it is going to convert that phone call into an actual appointment that shows up on the day of, right? So there's a lot of components. Um, Talk to us a little bit about, do your virtual assistants offer kind of off hours? How does it work, for business hours versus some of the off hours when a practice isn't open? Um, and then I also want to touch on the training that goes into how they answer the phone to the quality that the office is requiring.
Really good question. So we staff whatever hours the practice we work for requests. And we've got some larger groups that we work for that run 24/7, almost 365 coverage. So if
Wow.
someone is looking to request it, we can run it. Regarding training, which is a fascinating question because dental is a really unique industry. There are a ample amount of practice management softwares. There are then layered on top of that a bunch of engagement solutions. There's then tools like Pearl or Overjet or Dental Intelligence that are then layered on top of a Weave or a Modento or a Next Health. And those are just a bunch of examples. And so we look at training a little different. And I look at training almost like Lego blocks. If I gave you 10,000 Lego blocks of every color and every size out there, and I said, hey, I want to go build a Boeing, and to someone else, Boeing 747, and to someone else, I said, I want to go build the, Battlestar Galactica. With 10,000 Legos and all of those different colors, you can actually build whatever you want to build. And so what we have built is something called Reach University. And so someone can come in and say, I use Dentrix and I use Dental Intelligence with their suite of services. And this team member is going to be focused on new patient phone calls. And during those times that they're not, they're going to be focused on recare calls and unscheduled treatment calls. And then our system, because of that information that was put in, creates a learning journey where first you go through HIPAA compliance, then you go through an intro to dentistry, then you go through an intro to Dentrix, then you go through how to pull your recare list in Dental Intelligence. And then we go through how to master recare calls, how to master unscheduled treatment calls. And so instead of just saying, hey, we're going to bring you a trained dental virtual assistant, there are too many unique combinations that just putting everyone in a 1 or 2 or 3 week training class and blasting them with our fire hydrant isn't actually relevant to what many of them do. And so we have built then a flexible university based on what are they doing and what technology they're using. The training is very modulated in. And then we have a performance tracking system that then looks at the number of new patients they've scheduled, the number of existing patients they scheduled, the number of verifications. And obviously we have thousands of practices and thousands of team members that we serve. If we ever notice one of our team members and their data is materially weaker on new patient conversion rate or the speed of their insurance verifications, Reach University then assigns them a course as continued education so that if we ever realize that they need additional coaching and investment, the system can benchmark them against others and roll out not just training in the first 2 weeks, but something that in the future people are continuing to get invested in. It is not a set it and forget it and let's hand it over to the practice mentality.
I love that, and a lot of our audience will relate, to the idea of using these metrics to inform what training is needed for the team member. It removes the emotion from it, and so I love that you do use those analytics internally to just look at the facts and say, "Okay, we need some more training here," and you're taking it off of the plate and the shoulders of those offices you work with, and instead, you are all doing it, and so it really brings a lot of relief. And so I love the tailored approach to rather than just loading them up with everything under the sun about dental practice in the front. Um, they go through an interview process, right? And the office will select that person, and that then informs what training modules they're going through.
Yeah. So even before we begin kind of that customized training journey you just spoke about, we individually recruit by the practice. For you, if you're hiring, you may value, even for the exact same role, you may value different technical skills, soft skills, or personality traits than I value in my practice. And there is no right or wrong. There's no blatant one size fits all. And so we then get this information on what experience matters to you, what personality integrates in well with your team. And then we're going to bring 3 to 5 people that we believe fit that scope back to the team and say, now you interview and you tell us who's right instead of saying, oh, here's your pick of the litter.
Mm. And what makes this different from other types of outsourcing out there is that it's kind of that sweet spot, in my opinion, between um, maybe using an outsourcing company that has a variety of virtual workers on hand, and then maybe 2 or 3 people are working the account, and there could be problems that arise, and the office manager is kind of sending an email to somebody, and hoping that it gets solved. Whereas this is a little bit more of they have a direct relationship with the one dedicated assistant that they have selected themselves, so they can be very particular. They can update SOCs often. They can change the course. And I have a office that works with you guys that I coach, and already, I've met with that office manager and we've said, well, what if we have this VA just tweak that differently? Let's give this part back to your front office team member, and let's give this VA a little bit more of this particular process because that's going to be more effective. I followed up with her a month later, and yep, we went through it. That's been implemented. We've updated that SOC with the VA moving forward. And so I think office managers really kind of find that sweet spot between I don't really have to manage this employee the way I do my in person employees, but I can be very specific and tell them what I want, right?
So one of my long-winded rants, and I can always give a lot of them, never short for words. You could ask my mother. Is that outsourcing in dentistry, and I even think the typical outsourcing model of the world is fundamentally broken. So, like when I was a teenager growing up, my first bank account and debit card was Wells Fargo, and then I had a T-Mobile phone. I think when I was 16, and if you ever had to call Wells Fargo, credit card services, it's a poke your eyeballs out experience. And then when I bought Reach 9 years ago, you realize that that service that you're calling it Wells Fargo isn't actually Wells Fargo. It's a BPO that they hire in the Philippines or another part of the world. They're so disconnected from Wells Fargo that they can't even represent them properly. We just spoke about a second ago, there's a million different unique combinations in dentistry. And so when you outsource to a group, and I mean no slander against any outsourcing company, I actually just think fundamentally the model is broken. And so what we want to do is, why do people outsource? The typical MO of outsourcing is it's cost effective and you can get labor quickly. Well, could we take
Right.
that cost effective labor and the ability to hire and embed it into the practice where they're joining your morning huddle? They're doing a one-on-one weekly. If you're communicating in a Slack and a Discord and a Weave chat, whatever it might be, they live in your ecosystem so that when you say, hey, Dr. Caitlin is out for the day, then they know. But then if you have an outsourcing company and you have an account manager and they have a team of 7 people, and you say, hey, we're no longer accepting their insurance, but they're working for 32 other practices, it's really hard for them to get that information through. And so what we wanted to do is bring what we believe is the benefits people need of a reliable, engaged team member that's frankly half the cost, but embed it into the practice where that quality and that camaraderie can actually exist at the same time.
Absolutely. And, one more piece on phones before we move on is another fear I hear from a lot of clients is that their patients won't respond well to a virtual assistant answering the phone. They'll be able to tell that this is not somebody in the office. I think if it's the same person who is trained to build relationships the same way your in person team is, that can mitigate a lot of those concerns.
This is a fascinating comment. So a couple initial thoughts and then some cool technology that's beginning to exist. Number one, if we really think about it, if we structured what you said when we got started today, practices are missing 32% of their phone calls. Well, if your virtual team member is embedded as a overflow agent, is it better that the call goes answered or is it better that the call gets picked up? Now, dental is something that's very familiar. If you called Walmart, if you called T-Mobile, you expect it to be outsourced. If you call Apple, those are big corporate things that I think people don't expect out of dentistry. But the second thing is, so to take a step back here, in 2025, we as a business took 145,000 unique job applications and we hired well less than 1% of that. And so we can find people with minimal or non existent accents as well. And at the end of the day, the practice selects who they want to. If you want to be accent picky. And then the final thing that you said is like, you're right. People oftentimes when they think accent, and I felt this way about Wells Fargo and T-Mobile years ago, is as soon as you hear the accent, you think you're going to get really bad quality. But if they're embedded within the practice and they know the scheduling and they know the doctors, it can get represented a lot better. The final thing that's just like the nerd in me is we
Yeah.
are continuing to experiment with something called accent neutralization technology. It's invested in by Google and a couple other large companies where it actually takes the phonetics of the agent on the phone and matches it to the local area where the accent does not exist. The technology is not perfectly there today, but over the next couple years, people will be unable to sense that caller, that person who's picking up the phone is outside the United States because the call is adjusted or the accent is neutralized phonetically live on the phone.
Wow, that is really fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us because I think you're absolutely right, and if you can just kind of mitigate that portion of sometimes I think as the consumer, it just comes from, "I can't understand this person, and they can't understand me, and so how are we even gonna get to the root of my needs when we're spending 5 minutes on the spelling of my name," is the situation, and so, I think that's an important conversation to have, and let's just call it what it is, and it's good to know that there are companies that are working towards finding better solutions for that. It doesn't surprise me that you have so many applicants. I think A, you've got a great company to work for, but B, folks want that remote position. That those are very, very valued right now in the workspace. And so you have removed the do we have quality candidates in our zip code aspect, and you've opened up this job position to people all over the world, frankly.
Removing the political correctness of the conversation is the United States is your most expensive country on average to live in. Obviously, there's different zip codes in different parts of the world that are high as well, like London. But what really is getting taken place here is when we go, our base wage that we pay an entry level role in Brazil puts you in the top 25% of earners countrywide. And on average, that's where our base pay sits. And so what we're really doing here is we're saying this money doesn't go as far where we live in the United States, but it can attract really good college educated talent that's going to stick around as part not just of a job, but as part of a career, because fundamentally the money is really good.
That's a great point. Really, really interesting. I want to switch gears a little bit into another aspect of the offering, which is insurance verification. I know that's kind of at the core of what a lot of people might hire you for. Um, at the risk of boring everybody, because I know insurance verification is not the hottest topic to listen to. Um, let's just chat a little bit about the real need that exists in practices to get that right, and what your team does really well to solve for that.
Insurance verification is such an interesting world. I mean, for my 9 years, I've watched hundreds of millions of dollars of software and automation money go in to make the process better. And we know today it is getting better, but I'm a very analogous thinker. So, like when I order a package of soap on Amazon, it gets shipped to a warehouse probably pretty close to me in Salt Lake. But then someone's got to go pick it up and get it to my front doorstep. And so I think about, Amazon has built the best automation in the world, and they're going to get their package as close to you as they can for as cheap as possible. Someone's still got to get it to my doorstep. And so, where is Reach helping out here? What are those custom nuances where they've got to put in my gate code to drop it off? Well, guess what? No automation can do that yet. They've got to put it on my back doorstep so the porch pirates don't get it. And so, automation and insurance verifications is going to continue to change. But where a virtual team member helps you is they can complete that last mile of delivery. And insurance verifications, in my argument, is the number one thing that should be pulled out of a practice right away. It is not patient facing. If it's not done properly or on time, it's devastating to the level of care a patient gets, and it's devastating to the cash flow of a practice. And it's the most mundane, repetitious work. And so why not strip that away where your team, we've all walked into the practice and there's a super kind person who's stuck on the phone, and they're waiting for Delta Dental to pick up so they can verify that person who's coming in later today. And so it, just as we talked about a second ago with phone calls, it doesn't affect, no one's going to talk to them. And so it's such an easy thing to strip back. But then when it's done right, you produce more, your patients get better care, and your staff is more focused on the people actually in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is. It's hardly ever the highest and best use of anyone's time in your practice. The patient care coordinator or the insurance coordinator, of course, starts that process. But I think a lot of practices are ready to hand that off if they are looking to grow, and they have those team constraints. The last thing you want, touching on what we talked about earlier with don't let that phone call get missed. How heartbreaking would it be if your well-meaning front office team misses a potential new patient because they were stuck on the phone with MetLife over
Happens every
a
day to every
verification?
practice.
Right, right.
Like it's the
Um,
way the system's built, but you're so spot on.
Absolutely. So, talk to us about the customization process for a practice. As you mentioned, we all have our specifications and certain codes that are important to us to grab, and certain frequencies that we have to know for every patient. How would an office manager or an insurance coordinator go about kind of communicating those specifications to you?
So you only have one dedicated team member that works solely for your practice, unless you hire multiple, but you're not getting Corey one day and Caitlin the day after. And so where
Right.
Reach does a really good job is we can help you hire the international talent. We've got the legal entities to do so. We've got the compliance to do so. We've got that scalable Lego block training. But then there's that last mile of here is how we schedule our new patients. Here's the insurances in and out of network, so on and so forth. That's done when we then embed our team member directly into your practice. And so your internal SOPs are then followed by them. And day one, you can hand those things off directly to your team member. So it's not, I give it to Reach and Reach plays telephone over to the team member. But our goal, just as we said a few minutes ago, is to embed our people directly in to your structure so they can just be part of the team going forward.
Great, great. So let's say I hire Jessica to be my virtual assistant, and she is knee deep in insurance verifications, and she realizes something's inactive. And now we need to reach out to the patient to figure out, do they have updated insurance? What's going on? Would Jessica be the one to reach out directly to the patient?
It depends on the practice. What I would, if it were my
Okay.
practice, yes, just because then again, you're not handing it off to someone else, but based on,
Right.
if your in-house insurance coordinator would hand it off to someone at the front desk, it would follow the same policy and procedure. What we do not dictate is what codes they're getting. They're uploading a PDF. We want the exact same policies and procedures that live in the practice to be followed through and followed for by the Reach team member so that it's not like two different systems trying to coexist together.
I love it. I've definitely seen in practices where an outsourcing team will message the practice to say, these are the 3 people that are inactive for next week. You guys need to follow up and let me know when it's updated in there. Not that that's wrong, but we're talking about bridging those gaps and I think eliminating handoffs as much as possible. So it's just really great that it's so customizable. And I think it's a great offering. We've touched on phones, we've touched on insurance verification. What else would you add?
There's so many different ways to go. But I think you just said something interesting that at the core, what we really want to do at Reach is provide cost effective, reliable, and engaged team members who are trained the way practice need it. And then guess what? There's so many different things that they can do. They can do your confirmation calls. They can do your recare calls. They could call the patients that have a remaining balance. And so the at the end of the day, I feel more, and this is a poor analogy, but it gets the point across that we're a car dealership. You don't go to the car dealership and say, I want to drive from Salt Lake to Idaho later today. You say, I need a car. And that car can take you wherever you want to go. If you have a cost effective, reliable, and engaged and trained team member, they can fill the gaps that the practice needs. And it can be agile and saying, okay, great. Our normal person who picks up the phones, is out today. We're going to put Corey on the front lines to help schedule. And so it's that agileness you get where you have a car that is reliable and gets you from point A to point B to point C, but it doesn't have to be, okay, you're buying each individual Uber ride. You have a car that then flexes in the ways that you need it.
Awesome. It's music to our ears because you touched on it earlier. It's just the post-COVID world and the unknown in terms of staffing and who's going to show up today and how are we going to take care of our patients regardless of that. So it's really nice to be able to have a company on your side and know that there's some remote support no matter what, even if everyone were to walk out tomorrow. And of course, that's not going to happen. But I always want my owners to not be dependent on anybody. And when you set up infrastructure in this way, that goes a long way towards that.
I think when people think of outsourcing or virtual team members, I know you get a mix of doctor owners listening and also team members. And one thing that I want to call out is there's the term of let's elevate and delegate our team or delegate to our team. What a virtual team member allows the in office staff to do is not be stuck on the verifications, not be stuck on the endless recare list. And so I think on the surface, sometimes people think it's a virtual team versus the in office team. The different way to look at it is the virtual team is assisting the in office team. So the in office team can do the most valuable relationship building, patient facing work that truly does matter. And there's a stigma that it's one versus the other. what we want to be really clear on is when you get a virtual team member in, it should elevate and free your team to allow these team members to help them do these other things where then the team can focus on truly what they love and truly what is the most impactful.
Really good point. It kind of leads into what I was going to say. I was going to admit to you that in recent years, and just as recently as before this conversation, usually when I work with clients that are about to outsource or use any sort of virtual support, um, insurance verification, submission, EOB, entering things like that, I usually say something like, expect 80% when you outsource and you will be satisfied. You expect 100%, you're not going to be happy. And what I'm hearing today and what Reach is offering is kind of bridging that 20% gap for me to where, we think you guys are working really hard to get to a place where I don't have to warn clients about that you can outsource this and it's going to solve for a few things. And that's really great. But you have to accept the fact that there's going to be some breakdowns in communication. There's going to be some missed things. It's the nature of outsourcing. Um, so it's going a long way in terms of bridging the gap for quality as well. And I just really appreciate that.
No, and I agree. I also want to just provide the disclaimer: we are far from a perfect company, though. I love the recognition of trying to bridge the, can we give a cost effective service that also delivers and renders better quality? We are imperfect, but we fundamentally believe the typical model of outsourcing has been broken. And that's where the reputation, which I fully agree with, of if you outsource, be satisfied with 70 or 80%. And my goal is, can we help change that stigma, not from marketing messaging, but actual results that we provide to our practices?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an amazing option, and it's something that can be in all of our back pockets, whether we're ready right now or we're ready in 2 years. And so, for any of our listeners that are thinking about this and want to learn more and see if it's right for their practice either now or in the future, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, thank you. It is, our website's by far the easiest. It's getreach.co. And then from there, you can just click a button, schedule directly with our team. People can reach out to me directly on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. Definitely quicker to go through our website, but love connecting with the community that we get to serve. Because if we don't solve real problems, we're not a real company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have a lot to offer to anyone who is on an entrepreneurial journey themselves. So, thank you so much, Corey, for being with us today. This was a really fun conversation about virtual assistants and where this industry is heading. And I just really glad that we got to connect.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you all next time on the Shared Practices podcast.